Hey guys, in this video I'm going to go ahead and show you how to evaluate an expression. Now before we get started, let's just talk about what an expression is. An expression is just a combination of numbers and letters put together by one of the operations, which could be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or even dividing. Now if they give us an expression, sometimes we can simplify it, but in this case, if we have 4x plus 3, this term right here has an x, right? And this one doesn't. So I'm not able to add or subtract them. As far as the 4x plus 3, that would be the simplest form. I can't really do anything with it unless they tell me what x is. And in this case, they're telling me that x is equal to 2. So in order for you to evaluate an expression, if they tell you what the variable is, what the letter is, all you have to do is take the 2 and plug it in place of the x. So before we get started on evaluating expressions, there's a few things that we need to cover. Since we're going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, we do have to cover the rules of adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and we also have to recall the order of operations, which we use PEMDAS to tell us what to do. So let me go ahead and cover that. What we need to recall. So one of the things we need to remember is when we're multiplying or dividing, right? I like to use a pizza face. You see those two little eyes right there and the little mouth. I use a pizza face to help me determine what sign I'm going to keep. For example, let's say I have negative 4 times negative 2. Okay. I know that 4 times 2 is 8, right? But what sign am I going to keep? So I use a pizza face. We have a negative times a negative. So we have a negative times a negative should equals a positive. So my answer here would be a positive 8. Let me go ahead and do another example. Let me just take the markings off. Let me do 4 or negative 4 times 5. So I know that 4 times 5 is going to give me 20. But what sign am I going to keep? Well, in this case, we have a negative times a positive, right? We have a negative times a positive should equal a negative. So my answer is a negative 20. Now, before we go on, one of the things that you also have to remember is that whenever we have a number and a variable, a letter, next to each other, we're going to actually multiply. Parentheses, also in mathematics for us, whenever we have a number next to another number separated by parentheses, we're actually multiplying. So let's go ahead and go on to the next. And as far as adding or subtracting, they do follow different rules. So you have to be careful here. I do not use a pizza face for this. What I use for adding and subtracting is I circle the number with the sign in the front, circle the number with the sign in the front, and depending on the groups, I'm either going to add or subtract. So let me go ahead and do the other example. Circle the number with the sign in the front, circle the number with the sign in the front. I have another example here. Circle the number with the sign in the front. Circle the number with the sign in the front. Now, if you take a look at this one, let me go ahead and work them out. So in the first case, we have 4 minus 6. Once I circle them, I see that I have a positive 4 and a negative 6. Different groups, they don't like each other, so we're going to go ahead and subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. And what sign do you keep? You keep the sign of the bigger group, of the bigger number. Since 6 is bigger than 4, I'm going to go ahead and keep the negative. Let me go ahead and work out the other one. This is negative 9 minus 2. Once I circle, I could see that I have a negative 9 and a negative 2. They're actually in the same group. They're negatives and negatives. They like each other. So 9, we're going to add them up. 9 plus 2 should be 11. And of course, if there's 9 negatives and 2 negatives, they keep on being negatives. Now we have 11 negatives. Now, the last case that we have here, we have two different groups. We have a negative 6 and a positive 8. They don't like each other. They're going to subtract. And of course, I'm going to keep the sign of the bigger number, which is 8. So my answer here should be a positive 2. So whenever we do adding and subtracting, I always circle the number with the sign in the front And if it's in the same group, like in this case, we have a negative and a negative, hey, they're friends, they're going to add each other up and they keep on being the same group. If they're different groups, like in the first case, this one and this one, they're going to subtract and you always keep the sign of the bigger number. The last thing that we need to cover before we actually start evaluating expressions is the order of operations. That's one of the things we're going to start, since we're going to be multiplying, adding, subtracting, we might even divide. We need to follow the order of operations. The P stands for parentheses, so we're going to take a look if we have any parentheses. We have to work out any operation inside the parentheses first, and then we have to look for anything that has an exponent. If we find anything with an exponent, we work that second. Multiplication and division fall under the same step, so we look for multiplication and division from left to right. And the last one would be adding and subtracting, which also fall under the same step. We work it from left to right. So these are the little things that we need to remember in order to be able to successfully evaluate expressions. Let's go ahead and try one example. And our first example is they want us to evaluate 4x plus 3 when x is equal to 2. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and take the 2 and plug it in wherever I see an x. And this one should give us 4. Instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a 2. And then I'm just going to go ahead and bring the 3 over. So we have 4 times 2 plus 3. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and ask Mr. PEMDAS. Mr. PEMDAS, what am I supposed to do here? First of all, parentheses. Do we see any parentheses? Yes, we do have parentheses, but there's nothing going on inside, no type of operation. So I can skip the first one. Any exponents? We don't have any exponents. So the next one would be to multiply and divide whatever comes first from left to right. And as you guys can see, we have this multiplication part right there, which is 4 times 2. So 4 times 2 would be 8. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 3. We don't have any more multiplication or division, so this step is over. Let me go ahead and do the last one, which is add or subtract. And of course, we need to add these two numbers because if I circle the number with the sign in the front, both of them are positive. 8, 9, 10, 11. And of course, this is going to be a positive 11. So this is our first example, and that's how you evaluate expressions. Of course, we're going to do a few more examples together, and just so you guys can get the hang of it. Let me go ahead and clear this one up. Try the next one. Okay, guys, for this example, we have 5x plus 2x, and they want us to evaluate it when x is equal to 5. So I'm going to go ahead and take 5, and I'm going to go ahead and plug it in wherever I see an x. Right? Let me go ahead and plug that number in and see what I get. I have 5 in place of an x. I'm going to go ahead and plug in the 5, and then plus 2, and in place of an x, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the 5. Of course, once I finish plugging in, I need to refer back to Mr. PEMDAS. Mr. PEMDAS, can you help me out? Can you tell me what to do? And of course, he says, parentheses. Do we have any parentheses? Yes, we do, but there's nothing going on inside, so I can skip that step. What about exponents? No exponents. Multiplication or division? Yes, we do, from left to right. We do have 5 times 5, and we also have 2 times 5. So let me go ahead and work those out. We have 5 times 5 is 25. And we also have positive 2 times a positive 5, which gives us positive 10. Since we're done with multiplication and division, I'm going to go ahead and scratch that one out. And the last step would be to add or subtract based on the sign. So let me go ahead and work the last part out. We have a positive 25 and a plus 10, which is a positive 10. This is going to give us 35. So when we evaluate this expression, when x is 5, our answer is 35. Let's go ahead and try another example out. And actually, this one is the same expression, but with a different number. Now, once you plug in a different number, should give you a different value. Let's go ahead and check this one out. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 3 in the place of x. That one there and that one there. Let me go ahead and plug it in. So 5 times 3 plus 2 times 3. Go ahead and ask Mr. PEMDAS what I'm supposed to do first. Parentheses we do have, but there's nothing going on inside, so skip that step. Exponents, we don't have any exponents, so that's out of the question. Now multiply or divide from left to right. We do have some multiplication happening here. 5 times 3, and we have the 2 times 3 as well. So let me go ahead and work them out. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 times 3 is 6. And of course, once we're done with multiplication and division, we have to add or subtract based on the signs. And we have 15, positive 15, and a positive 6. So 15 plus 6 is 21. So our answer whenever x is equals to 3 is 21. Let's go ahead and try out another example. And this one's a different example, and they want us to evaluate 2 times x plus 4 plus 10 when x is equal to 5. So we're going to follow the same steps. First, we need to plug in wherever we see an x, we need to plug in a 5. So let me go ahead and rewrite this expression as 2 times, instead of an x, I'm plugging in a 5. And then I just go ahead and write everything else. Plus 10. So once I finish plugging in, remember we have to refer back to Mr. PEMDAS, and he's going to let us know what to do, in what order we need to evaluate this expression. First of all, do we have parentheses? And yes, we do. We have parentheses, and is there something happening in there? Yes, there is. They want us to add the 5 plus the 4. And of course, you need to work out this part first. So I'm going to go ahead and do circle the number with the sign in the front, circle the number with the sign in the front. We have 2, 5 plus 4 is 9. And then I just bring everything else down. Notice I didn't do anything with the 2, I just brought it down because Mr. PEMDAS told me that I had to work the parentheses out first. So we're done here. Any exponents we don't have. Let's see if we can multiply or divide, which we can. We have 2 times 9. So 2 times 9 is 18. I just go ahead and bring down the 10. And the last one would be to add or subtract based on the sign. So we have a positive 18 and a positive 10. This gives me 28. So my answer for this expression when x is equal to 5 is 28. Let's go ahead and try out another example. And this one, now they're giving us 2 letters, 2 variables. Let's see what they want us to do here. So they want us to evaluate this expression when x is equals to 3, which I'm going to plug in there, and when y is equal to 2, which I'm going to go ahead and plug in there. So it doesn't matter if you have 1 variable, 2 variables, or 100 variables. As long as they tell you what the variables are, you can go ahead and evaluate the expression. Let me go ahead and plug those numbers in. We have 2, instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a 3. And then plus 4, instead of a y, I'm going to plug in a 2. Of course, we refer to Mr. PEMDAS. Mr. PEMDAS, what am I supposed to do first? Parentheses, there's nothing going on. Exponents, we don't have any. Multiply or divide, of course, we can multiply the 2 times the 3, which is 6. And then we also have 4 times 2, which is 4 times 2 is a positive 8. The last step would be to add or subtract. So circle the number with the sign in the front. Both of them are positive. So we have 6 plus 8 should be 14. Okay, guys, let's try another example out. Let me clear this one. And in this one, they give us 3 variables. So they want us to plug in. Let me go ahead and move this out of the way so you guys can see. So they want us to plug in a 3 in x. They want us to plug in a 2 in y. And they want us to plug in a 4 in z. So following the same procedure, all I have to do is plug in everything that they want me to plug in and then evaluate. So instead of an x, I'm going to plug in a 3 plus 2y, which I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 2, and minus, right? I have this minus right here, minus z, which is a 4. Of course, referring to Mr. PEMDAS, we have parentheses, but nothing going on inside the parentheses. And no exponents, multiply or divide. We can multiply these two right here, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring everything else down because the only part I actually worked out was this part right here, which is the multiplication part. Everything else is going to come down. We bring down the 3. This one is a plus 4. And I bring down the minus 5. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and do add and subtract next from left to right, whatever comes first. I'm going to go ahead and do the 3 plus 4, which 3 plus 4 gives me 7, right? And I just bring down the minus 4. So I work this part out, and then I brought down the minus 4. Of course, the last one is we still need to add or subtract. I'm going to, based on the sign, I'm going to go ahead and circle these two. We have a 7 and a negative 4. They're different groups, so we're going to subtract. So 7 minus 4 is 3. Let me go ahead and put it on this side. And of course, you keep the sign of the bigger number, which is the positive 7. So our answer should be positive 3. I think we might have another example. And the last example. For this one right here, they want us to evaluate, and they're using the same numbers, but the expression looks a little different. So let's go ahead and work this one out. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 3 in x. I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 2 in y. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 4 in z. Let me rewrite this expression to see what it looks like and check it out to see what I have to do. So it's going to be 2 times 3. And of course, instead of a y, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 2. And instead of a z, I'm going to go ahead and plug in a 4. So if I ask Mr. PEMDAS, what am I supposed to do here? He says, look for any parentheses. And we do have parentheses, but there's nothing going inside each parentheses. So we can skip that step. Exponents, we don't have any exponents. Multiplication or division. You see parentheses all over the place. So this means we're going to have to multiply all of these numbers. And of course, I'm going to take it slow. I'm going to start with the first 2, which is 2 times 3, which gives us 6. I'm going to bring everything else down. So I work that little part out. And then I have 6 times 2, which is 12. So I work this little part out. I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to 4. And the last part is 12 times 4, which should give us 48. So as you can see, guys, that's how you evaluate expressions. Hope this helped, and hope to see you guys soon. This is the first video. Should help you out with the take-home packet that we gave our students at Martin High School. But if you didn't get a packet, I'm also going to post the assignment online where you can download and use Google Forms and also get a little bit of practice on evaluating expressions. Thank you again, guys. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.